Hello everyone. In this tutorial we will show how to create a story using the data visualization and interactive storytelling service, available on the Destination Earth platform. For creating your stories with you need an account on the Destination Earth platform. The registration is free for all users. From the Destination Earth web portal, you can also access the documentation, where you can find the details on how to use our service. There is a service that allows to tell stories using data. Exploring the data set hosted on the platform from different sources, users create interactive stories by combining these datasets with text, plots, images, 3D models, raster and vector data, without writing a line of code. So, where do you start? Your story starts here, from the landing page of our service at the.destin.eu. In the middle of the screen, you can find an interactive gallery of the latest stories created by the users. Scrolling down the page, there is a brief description of the service. Scrolling more, you can find also a preview of the datasets from our portfolio, showing climate data from the Destin Climate Change Adaptation Digital Twin and Copernicus Climate Change Service, atmosphere data from CAMS and ECMWF Forecast, and marine data from CMEMS. You can also access an interactive preview of this data in full screen mode. This preview can be useful for having an idea of the data published on the platform. You can find below also the list of the thematic area that you can use to categorize your stories, just here. Scrolling more, there is a description of the main features of the service. You can visualize the Destination Earth public stories and also your private stories. You can explore the datasets available on the platform. You can create your own stories by combining the public datasets with your own assets. And finally, you can also share your stories with the community. In addition, you can find our contact details at the end of the landing page. By clicking on the Create Your Story button from the landing page, you can access the story editor and start telling your story. But first of all, you have to sign in with your account on the Destination Earth platform. In the middle of the screen, there is a globe map where your data will be visualized. While, on the left of the screen, there is the editing session. Let's imagine you want to create a story about medicines. So, let's start with adding a title for your story, like What are Medicines? And then, you can add a description as well. And, also, you can add a geographical reference for the story, by clicking on this icon here, and then, by clicking on the map, to set the position of the story. You can add the author or authors of the story also. Each story, as a book, should have a cover. So you can select a cover for your story. You can choose an image from your local computer, or from an external URL, or from your own assets. So let's put an image from your local computer, as an example for the cover. But please, note that you can select also a short local video or a video from YouTube, as the cover of your story. Then, you can select up to 4 thematic area for the story. Let's choose for instance, the atmosphere and the climate thematic area. At this point, you can save the first draft of your first story. Let's start to add some data. In your slides, you can choose the data from public datasets, your own assets, terrains and climate trends. Opening the datasets panel, you can see the list of available datasets from Destination Earth Climate Change Adaptation Digital Twin, from Copernicus Marine Service, from Copernicus Atmosphere Service, but also data provided by EUMETSAT and ECMWF reanalysis and forecast data. But let's have a look at the sea surface temperature data. Since we are writing a story about the Medicans, in this case we would like to compare Destination Earth and ERA 5 data, for instance, to see the difference in resolution between these two datasets. So you can select both the datasets, and then, by clicking on this button, you can split the screen, and see the Destination Earth data on the right of the screen, and the ERA 5 data on the left of the screen. You can also capture the view of the slide, as a starting point of the globe map when the slide is visualized. Since these datasets are all time series, you can have a look at the time extent from here, and you can also select a specific time range for these datasets. Let's select, in this case, January 2025. You can also enable the globe rotation, and you can also enable the autoplay of the timeline. Then, you can also add a title for the slide. You can write it directly on the proper section, or you can copy-paste the title here, and you can also add the textual information here, in this section. It is possible to select a different font of the text. It is possible, also, to add a different font color, if you need to highlight some words, or concepts. At this point, you can save again your changes. You can add also images in the text section. For instance, you can add plots from the Climate Trends panel. These plots are qualitative plots related to temperature anomalies. The climate trends are available for the main European cities, the European countries, and also for the entire globe. If you select, for instance, the option Global from the panel, the globe is highlighted in yellow, and then, if you click again on the map, this interactive menu is shown on the screen. These types of climate trends are available: climate spirals, anomalies bars, and stripes. Let's have a look to the spiral climate trends. In this case, the more suitable for the story is the sea surface temperature. You can download this image on your computer, and you can also put the image here, from your local computer, so that the image will be shown in text panel of your story. You can add the new slide by clicking on this button. For instance, you could combine here public datasets with your own assets. In this second slide you can add the data related to Apollo Medican, occurred in October 2021. So, for instance, you can use the Meteosat second generation data, provided by EUMETSAT, which has an extent from 2020 to current date. So you can select the proper date range for this event, between 26th and the 27th of October 2021. Also in this case, you can enable the autoplay of the timeline. But, since this data are updated every 15 minutes, you can reduce the animation speed. You can combine this data with your assets, which are shown by clicking on this panel. You can upload your assets by clicking on this button, and see the list of all your assets here. User assets can be of different types. The service supports 3D models, georeferenced images, cesium files, GeoJSON files, KML files, images and videos in the most common formats. For this story, you can add a KML file, containing an image of this Medican Apollo, captured by Sentinel-2 and provided by the Copernicus data space ecosystem. You can search the file by its name from the search bar, and then, you can add your asset on the map. After updating the slide with title, text, link and images, you can add a new slide, for instance for combining your own assets with a terrain. From your own assets, you can add now a cloud-optimized GeoTIFF file, related to Apollo Medican, sensed by Sentinel-3 SLSTR, and provided by the Copernicus browser. You can add the image on the map by clicking on the proper icon, and you can also zoom on the image on the map by clicking on the magnifier button. You can adjust the position of the globe in the scene, and you can also add, for instance, the cesium world terrain, selecting it from the Terrains panel. Below the image, you can see the terrain, for instance navigating through the Alps, in northern Italy. You can update the view, in case of need, and then you can save another draft of your story. In this case, this image does not contain time information, so, from the editing section, you can hide the timeline, because you don't need it at all. And finally, you can add your last slide, as a conclusion of the story. In this case, you can use a video, as a background. The available options, for adding images, and video as background, are, an upload from local computer, the selection from a URL, or an upload from your assets. Let's add a video from YouTube, adding the link on the input text. You will see the video as background for the slide, instead of the globe map. In the story editor, you can also choose different layouts, for the text content of the slide. For instance, in the last slide, you can select the top layout, and, in addition, you can set the layout as transparent. As well as you can add a video, as the background of the slide, you can also add a video in the textual content of the slide. So now that your story is completed, you can share it with the community, by clicking on this button. Save again story, and, by clicking on the share icon. You can see and download the QR code, that you can share on the social media. From the same panel, you can also copy the link of the story. Now it's time to see how your story looks like in the story viewer, which contains, first of all, the cover of the story, together with the title, the description, and the author. On the right of the screen, there is the QR code, which is added there in all the shared and public stories. On the left of the screen, there is the menu, which contains the list of your slides. You can jump to the next slide, by clicking on the menu, or by clicking on the arrows here. As you can see, on the scene are displayed the datasets added by you. Here you can interact with the globe in the story viewer. You can stop the globe rotation, you can zoom in, zoom out, you can move the split line. You can read the text of the slide, and you can see the picture, here, in the left panel. You can go to the next slide, and see the combination of your assets, and datasets related to the Medicine Apollo, in an interactive way. You can read the text as well. Go to the third slide, where there is the image added from Copernicus Sentinel-3, and take your time for watching the video added in the right panel of the slide. Finally, you can go to your last slide, where there is the video, as background with the text chosen by you over impressed. For shared and public stories, in the last page, you can rate the stories, and you can also share the stories with the community. Let's go back to the landing page, to explore the last component of the story browser, which contains the catalog of all public and user stories. You can filter the stories, by clicking in one or more thematic area on the left side of the screen. You can also see only the public stories in the story browser, by clicking on the public button, or you can see only your own stories, by clicking on the private button. On the map, there is a placeholder of the story, at the position set in the story editor. Here you can find the last created story. By clicking on the item of the list, your story is centered on the map, while by clicking on this button you can edit the story, and by clicking on this button you can delete it. You can access the story viewer, by clicking on this icon, or by clicking directly on the placeholder on the map. So, now it's your turn. Are you ready to tell your story with the